The story opens with a sense of urgency and desperation as a small, tearful girl named Lily races across the dusty plains, her tiny feet kicking up clouds of dirt with every hurried step. Her eyes are wide with fear, and her voice trembles as she calls out repeatedly, "Please, please save my mama." The reader immediately senses the gravity of her situation. Her mother is gravely ill, and no one in the nearby village has the knowledge or courage to help. The little girl's determination and innocence create a poignant contrast with the danger and severity of her mother's condition. Lily's vulnerability serves as the emotional anchor for this part, making the audience immediately invested in her plight. After what feels like an endless run, Lily finally reaches the edge of the dense forest where the Apache man resides. His home is a simple cabin, isolated from the village and hidden among the trees, reflecting his solitary lifestyle and cautious nature. He has spent years living apart from others, wary of human interaction due to past loss and betrayal. The story emphasizes his isolation, giving readers insight into why a stranger's plea might not easily penetrate his guarded heart. Yet Lily's desperate cry shakes him from his solitude. The juxtaposition of the innocent girl's vulnerability with the Apache man's hardened exterior creates tension, foreshadowing a transformative encounter. When Lily reaches the cabin, she finds the door closed and hesitates, but her mother's life hangs in the balance. Summoning all her courage, she knocks and pleads through the door. The Apache man, initially wary and suspicious, peers out at her tear-streaked face. This moment is crucial. It establishes his initial reluctance. He knows the world is dangerous, and opening his door to outsiders has always been a risk. But the sincerity and fear in the girl's voice stirs something buried within him, a spark of compassion long dormant. The story uses this moment to explore themes of trust, empathy, and the human instinct to help those in need. After a tense pause, the Apache man decides to open his door, not fully out of altruism, but because he cannot ignore the girl's desperate plea. As he listens to her frantic explanation of her mother's illness, he recalls his own past experiences of loss and helplessness. This connection, though unspoken, creates the first thread of emotional bond between the girl and the Apache man. The narrative subtly reveals his knowledge of healing. He is familiar with herbs and natural remedies passed down through his tribe, and sets the stage for his role as both protector and healer. Through his quiet observation, he assesses the severity of the mother's condition, showing his wisdom and calm in contrast to the girl's frantic energy. Part 1 concludes with the Apache man agreeing to help. The story highlights the beginning of a journey both literal and emotional. He prepares necessary herbal remedies and gathers supplies, while Lily watches with a mixture of awe and hope. Their departure from the cabin toward her mother's home signifies more than just a journey through the physical landscape. It symbolizes the breaking down of emotional barriers, the forging of trust, and the awakening of compassion. The final scenes of Part 1 establish suspense and anticipation. Will the Apache man's knowledge and courage be enough to save her mother? The story leaves readers emotionally engaged, eager to follow their journey, and invested in the evolving relationship between the girl and the once solitary Apache man. The Apache man and Lily set off across the rugged landscape, the early morning sun casting long shadows through the forest. Lily clutched his hand tightly, her small fingers barely wrapping around his. She stumbled often, but he stayed patient, guiding her over uneven roots, rocks, and hidden streams. Every so often, he would glance at her worried face, silently calculating how much longer she could endure the journey. He wasn't just traveling to heal her mother. He was walking into a world he had long avoided, and each step challenged the walls he had built around his heart. As they moved deeper into the forest, danger began to make its presence known. A sudden rustle in the bush made Lily gasp, and her grip tightened. The Apache man's instincts immediately kicked in. He motioned for her to stay low and whispered instructions. Moments later, a wild animal, a mountain bobcat, darted across their path. With calm precision, he guided Lily to safety, his experience in the wilderness evident in every movement. The encounter, though brief, left her wide-eyed and trembling. In that moment, Lily realized that he wasn't just a healer, he was a protector, someone capable of bravery she had never witnessed before. The journey continued with a quiet tension. Lily told stories of her mother, painting a picture of the woman's kindness, laughter, and gentle hands that had always comforted her. The Apache man listened without interruption, each detail stirring memories of his own lost family. He had lived so long in solitude that he had almost forgotten what it meant to care for someone else. Yet, listening to Lily, he felt a shift within himself, a quiet longing to protect, to nurture, and to be needed. Their conversation wasn't just about her mother's illness. It became a bridge between two worlds, between innocence and experience, fear and courage. By midday, they reached the edge of the village. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the sounds of daily life filled the air. Villagers noticed them approaching, and whispers followed. Many still feared the Apache man, remembering tales of his solitude and wild skill. But Lily ran ahead, calling out, "Mama, we're coming!" Her cries carried urgency and hope, and the villagers' suspicion softened when they saw the desperate little girl and the calm, strong figure beside her. Inside her home, her mother lay pale and frail, the illness having sapped her strength. Lily ran to her side, her tears falling freely. The Apache man knelt beside the bed, examining the mother with careful hands. He could feel the pulse, observe the fever, and knew exactly which herbs to use. Lily watched, her wide eyes filled with awe, as he mixed a potion from roots and leaves he had carried in a small satchel. Every motion was deliberate, every gesture precise. A combination of knowledge, skill, and empathy. As the medicine took effect, the mother's breathing eased slightly. Lily clutched her hand, relief washing over her in small waves. But the Apache man didn't stop there. He instructed the girl on how to care for her mother, teaching her to gently apply compresses and keep her hydrated. He stayed with them through the long hours of the afternoon, not as a visitor, but as a guardian, bridging the space between their worlds. By evening, the mother stirred, opening her eyes with a faint smile. Lily cried tears of gratitude, hugging the Apache man tightly. He, too, felt an unfamiliar warmth, the first genuine connection in years. The village, once hesitant and fearful, began to see him not just as a solitary figure of legend, but as someone capable of compassion, bravery, and healing. Part 2 ends with a quiet scene. The Apache man sitting outside the home, watching the sunset, the girl's laughter echoing softly from within. The journey has changed them both. Lily has found hope, her mother has found care, and the Apache man has begun to open his heart, realizing that connection, however risky, is also profoundly rewarding. The night after the mother's first signs of recovery, a quiet tension settled over the village. The Apache man remained outside the small home, sitting near the firelight, his eyes scanning the horizon. Lily slept soundly beside her recovering mother, trusting that the man who had saved them would keep watch. For the Apache man, the stillness was unusual. He was not accustomed to lingering near people, and yet, for the first time, he felt a sense of responsibility that went beyond duty. As darkness deepened, a distant howl echoed across the plains. The Apache man's instincts flared. He rose, moving silently toward the sound, signaling Lily to remain inside. Soon, another noise joined the first, a group of bandits, notorious in the region, creeping toward the village. They had heard rumors of a wealthy family struggling with illness and intended to take advantage. The Apache man's body tensed, his mind analyzing escape routes, vantage points, and potential strategies. This night would test not only his bravery but also the fragile trust he had begun to build with Lily and her family. The bandits approached the mother's house, unaware of the guardian outside. The Apache man positioned himself between them and the home, his presence a silent but formidable warning. When the leader of the bandits noticed him, he laughed, underestimating the man's skill. But the Apache man moved with precision, every motion deliberate, every step calculated. Using the shadows and the cover of night, he created the illusion of multiple defenders, diverting their attention and slowing their advance. Inside, Lily awoke to the sounds of the confrontation. Fear gripped her heart, but she remembered his calm, protective presence. She tiptoed to the doorway, peeking out to see the silhouettes of the attackers and the lone Apache man. Though small and vulnerable, she felt safe, her trust in him unshakable. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and admiration, watching him protect her family with unwavering resolve. The standoff lasted hours, tension stretching every moment like a tightrope. Eventually, the bandits, convinced they were outmatched and sensing the villagers beginning to stir outside, retreated into the darkness, leaving the Apache man standing vigilant. He returned inside to Lily and her mother, his expression unreadable but calm. The mother, though weak, reached out to touch his arm, her gratitude profound. Lily hugged him tightly, whispering, "You saved us. You really saved us." In the aftermath, the village's perception of the Apache man shifted dramatically. Those who had once feared him now saw him as a hero, a protector who could navigate dangers they could not even imagine. Yet for the Apache man, the victory was quieter, internal. He had not only defended life but had proven to himself that opening his heart, even after years of solitude, was not weakness but strength. The night passed, leaving a sense of calm and renewal. The mother's health steadily improved, and Lily's laughter returned, filling the home with light. The Apache man, once a figure of isolation and mystery, became a steady presence in their lives. He shared stories of the forest, survival skills, and the traditional ways of his people. Through these lessons, Lily learned resilience and courage, and the Apache man found joy in teaching, a connection he had long denied himself. By morning, the first light touched the horizon, casting a warm glow over the village. The Apache man looked at Lily and her mother, realizing that what had begun as a mission to save a life had transformed into something far deeper, a bond that bridged generations, cultures, and the walls of a guarded heart. Part 3 closes on this note of hope and connection. The girl's family healed, the village watching in newfound respect, and the Apache man quietly embracing the first steps toward belonging and love. Days passed since the Apache man had saved Lily's mother, and a fragile peace settled over the village. The mother's strength returned gradually, and Lily spent hours at his side, learning about the herbs, the wilderness, and the careful balance between life and danger. Though she had always admired him for his courage, she began to understand the depth of his wisdom, patience, and quiet strength. Yet, even as trust and affection grew, a shadow loomed on the horizon, a threat that would test both his skills and the bonds he had started to form. One afternoon, as the Apache man and Lily collected herbs near the edge of the forest, the distant echo of shouts reached their ears. A band of strangers had entered the village, claiming to represent a neighboring town, but their intentions were unclear. Their arrogance and the glint of weapons suggested danger. The Apache man's instincts went immediately on high alert. He glanced at Lily, whose eyes widened with fear, and silently instructed her to stay low. The forest, which had once been a place of calm and teaching, became a strategic battleground in his mind, a maze of cover, escape routes, and ambush points. Returning to the village, They saw that the strangers were attempting to intimidate the villagers, demanding food, supplies, and shelter. Many villagers froze in fear, unsure how to confront the intruders. The Apache man, however, stepped forward, a figure of quiet authority. His presence alone commanded attention, and the strangers hesitated, sensing that he was not to be trifled with. He spoke in a firm, calm voice, warning them that any violence would be met with swift resistance. His reputation as a formidable warrior preceded him, and the tension in the air became palpable. Despite his warnings, one of the men tried to strike a villager. The Apache man reacted instantly, disarming him with skill and precision, demonstrating both strength and restraint. He didn't act out of anger, but from necessity to protect the innocent and prevent unnecessary bloodshed. Lily watched from behind him, awe and admiration filling her. She saw not only his bravery but his sense of justice, his understanding that true strength included restraint and wisdom. The confrontation escalated into a delicate negotiation, with the Apache man using both words and presence to guide the strangers toward retreat. His knowledge of the land and survival tactics allowed him to predict their movements and intentions, turning the odds in the village's favor. By nightfall, the strangers withdrew, intimidated by the combination of the Apache man's skill and the villagers' resolve, inspired by his courage. Afterward, the village gathered around the mother's home, expressing gratitude not just for her recovery, but for the protection and guidance they had received. The Apache man, once an outsider, now stood at the center of a community that had learned to trust him. Lily ran to him, hugging his arm tightly, whispering, "You saved more than Mama. You saved all of us." He looked down at her, a rare smile breaking across his face, feeling a warmth that had been absent from his life for too long. That night, as he sat outside the cabin, watching the stars reflect on the quiet village, he realized the transformation within himself. The little girl's plea had been more than a call for help. It had opened a door he had long kept closed. In protecting and guiding them, he had discovered that connection, compassion, and trust were as essential as skill and strength. The bond between him, Lily, and her family had deepened, built not only on necessity but on mutual respect and care. Part 4 ends with a sense of cautious triumph. The village safe, the mother recovering, Lily's faith in him unshaken, and the Apache man beginning to embrace the possibility of belonging, love, and community, a life beyond solitude. The days following the bandits' retreat passed with a gentle rhythm. Lily's mother regained her strength, tending to the small garden and teaching her daughter household tasks while the Apache man continued to guide Lily in the ways of the forest. The bond between them had deepened beyond gratitude. He was no longer merely a protector. He had become a mentor and a quiet presence of stability in their lives. Yet, even amid this newfound harmony, a personal challenge loomed for the Apache man, one that could test the limits of his heart. One morning, as he and Lily were collecting water from a nearby creek, he noticed a stranger watching them from the forest edge. At first, he thought it might be another wandering villager, but the stranger's posture, tense and calculating, suggested otherwise. The Apache man's instincts kicked in immediately. He motioned for Lily to step behind a cluster of bush while he approached cautiously. The stranger revealed himself as a healer from another tribe, one whose knowledge of medicine rivaled the Apache man's own. Yet his demeanor was sharp and condescending. Questioning the methods the Apache man had used to heal Lily's mother Dot at first, the Apache man bristled. He had spent years perfecting his craft and protecting those under his care, and no one's criticism, no matter how learned, would sway him. But the stranger persisted, pointing out minor mistakes and suggesting that without his intervention, Lily's mother might have relapsed. The Apache man felt a flicker of doubt, first in years, and for the first time, he faced the challenge of humility. Could he accept guidance? Could he admit that even his vast knowledge had limits? Meanwhile, Lily watched from behind a bush, sensing the tension building between the two men. She understood the importance of the encounter. It was more than about medicine. It was about pride, trust, and the willingness to open oneself to others. The Apache man, though proud, allowed the stranger to demonstrate an alternate method of treating certain symptoms. He observed carefully, comparing it with his own techniques. Slowly, he realized that this challenge was not an attack on him, but an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to strengthen the care he could offer Lily's mother. The lesson concluded with a subtle truce. The stranger nodded in respect, acknowledging the Apache man's skill and dedication. In turn, the Apache man recognized the value in collaboration, understanding that true strength sometimes required letting go of pride and embracing guidance. Lily, witnessing this exchange, felt a surge of admiration. Her mentor had faced not only external threats but internal struggles, and he had emerged with integrity and wisdom intact. That evening, as they returned to the village, the Apache man shared small parts of the day's lesson with Lily, explained that even the strongest warriors and wisest healers have moments of doubt, but what matters is the willingness to listen, adapt, and grow. Lily absorbed the lesson with the eagerness only a child could possess, asking questions and committing details to memory. The Apache man realized that in teaching her, he was also teaching himself, learning patience, humility, and the importance of community. By nightfall, the mother sat by the fire, her health steadily improving. Lily curled up beside her, and the Apache man watched quietly, reflecting on the day. The encounter with the outsider had tested his pride and pushed the boundaries of his heart, yet he had embraced the challenge. He recognized that opening himself, whether to strangers, friends, or the little girl who had first pleaded at his door, was not weakness, but the truest measure of strength. Part 5 ends with a quiet sense of growth. The Apache man's knowledge is enriched, his heart more open, and the bonds between him, Lily, and her family stronger than ever. The stage is set for the next challenge, one that may not test skill or pride, but trust, love, and the courage to fully embrace the life he has started to build. A few weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Lily's mother had regained her strength, and the village began to view the Apache man as more than a mysterious outsider. They now saw him as a protector, a healer, and a part of their fragile community. Lily spent her days learning survival skills, herb lore, and the subtle wisdom that came from living closely with nature. Yet, beneath this calm, an unexpected emotional challenge was quietly brewing, one that would test the Apache man in ways no physical danger ever had. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Lily's mother fell suddenly ill again. This time, her condition was far more severe, with fever, chills, and a dangerous weakness in her pulse. Lily, terrified, ran to the Apache man, pleading desperately, "Please, don't let her die." His heart clenched at the fear in her voice, and for the first time, he felt the heavy weight of responsibility, not just as a healer, but as a protector of something far more fragile: trust, hope, and love. He quickly examined the mother, assessing her pulse and breathing, and realized the illness required more than the usual remedies. He needed to venture deeper into the forest to gather rare herbs, some growing only in treacherous terrain. Every step outside the village meant potential danger: wild animals, unstable cliffs, and the unknown elements, but he didn't hesitate. Lily insisted on accompanying him, refusing to be left behind, her small hands gripping his arm as he guided her through the forest. Along the journey, the Apache man shared stories of his youth, of losses, mistakes, and moments when he had faced despair alone. It was rare for him to speak of such things, but Lily's unwavering trust opened a door he had long kept closed. In her presence, he allowed himself to be vulnerable, and this honesty strengthened their bond even further. Lily listened intently, her eyes wide with admiration and empathy, realizing that even the strongest people carry scars and fears. When they reached the rare herbs, a sudden storm broke over the forest. Rain lashed their faces, and thunder rolled across the hills, making every step a test of skill and courage. The Apache man shielded Lily, guiding her over slick rocks and through sudden streams. The forest, alive with the storm, mirrored the intensity of their emotions: fear, determination, and unwavering hope intertwining with the roaring wind. At one point, he slipped, but Lily's small hands grabbed his arm, reminding him that they were not alone. Together they pushed forward, and he gathered the necessary herbs. Returning to the village, soaked and exhausted, he immediately began preparing a powerful remedy. Lily assisted as best she could, passing leaves, grinding roots, and watching intently as he worked. The process was painstaking, and time seemed to stretch unbearably as the mother's condition worsened. Yet, through the long night, the Apache man's focus never wavered. He worked with skill, patience, and deep care, infusing every action with a quiet determination born of both compassion and responsibility. By dawn, the mother's fever broke, her breathing steadied, and color slowly returned to her cheeks. Lily clung to the Apache man, tears of relief streaming down her face. He, too, felt an unfamiliar warmth, a mix of pride, relief, and a burgeoning affection that extended beyond duty. That night, as the storm subsided and the first light touched the village, he realized that the greatest challenges were not wild animals, bandits, or illness alone. They were the emotional connections that demanded trust, courage, and the willingness to care deeply. Part 6 ends with a sense of triumph and introspection. The mother saved, Lily's faith unwavering, and the Apache man beginning to truly understand the strength in opening one's heart, embracing responsibility, and allowing himself to belong to a family he had never imagined. A few weeks of relative peace had passed in the village. Lily's mother was strong again, tending to her garden and enjoying the sunlight in the quiet mornings. Lily had grown more confident, exploring the woods with the Apache man, learning not just about herbs and survival, but about courage, patience, and the unspoken strength of quiet leadership. The Apache man, too, had changed. No longer the solitary figure of legend, he had begun to embrace his role as protector, teacher, and part of a small, cherished community. One afternoon, while gathering herbs near the edge of the forest, the Apache man noticed signs of movement, footprints too large to be animals, and the faint echo of voices carried by the wind. His instincts immediately went on high alert. The village was under threat. A group of outlaws, known to raid nearby settlements, had tracked the Apache man's presence and saw an opportunity. A community led, in part, by the man who had so recently intervened to save a life. Without hesitation, he signaled Lily to return to the village and warned her mother to stay inside. The Apache man moved silently through the trees, his every step calculated, his eyes scanning the forest. As he approached the edge of the clearing, he saw the outlaws, armed and brash, attempting to intimidate the villagers and seize supplies. Though they were few in number, their confidence was high, and they had no idea who they were confronting. The Apache man stepped into view, his presence commanding immediate attention. The outlaws laughed at first, underestimating him as just one man, but the moment he raised his hand, their bravado faltered. He moved with lethal precision, disarming one attacker before another could strike, each motion fluid and purposeful, revealing years of skill and discipline. Yet this time, it was not just about physical ability. The Apache man's strategy relied on protecting the village while minimizing harm. Every action was calculated to prevent unnecessary violence, emphasizing wisdom alongside strength. Inside the village, Lily watched from the safety of her mother's arms, her small body trembling with fear and admiration. She saw the man she had come to trust and love not just as a healer, but as a protector willing to risk his life for those he cared about. Villagers who had once been wary or fearful now rallied, inspired by his courage and leadership. Together, they created barriers, helped the Apache man where they could, and witnessed the precise balance of fearlessness and restraint in his actions. The standoff stretched on, each moment tense with possibility. One of the outlaws tried to seize a villager, but the Apache man intercepted him effortlessly, his calm authority quelling both fear and aggression. The intruders, realizing they were outmatched and facing resistance they had not anticipated, began to retreat. The Apache man did not chase them. His goal was protection, not vengeance, and his control over the situation impressed both the villagers and the fleeing attackers. Once the threat had passed, the village slowly exhaled. The mother and Lily emerged from their home, relief and gratitude etched into their faces. Lily ran to the Apache man, throwing her arms around him, whispering, "You saved us again. You always save us." He felt a rare warmth, the kind that comes from not only physical survival but from the trust, love, and connection he had cultivated over weeks of shared struggle. That evening, as the sun set, painting the horizon with fiery colors, the Apache man sat with Lily and her mother, the village quieting around them. He realized that his role had transformed completely from a solitary figure guarding his own heart to a central protector of a family and a community who now depended on him. The events of the day had tested not just his skill, but his commitment, his compassion, and his willingness to fully open his heart. Part 7 ends on a note of calm triumph. With the village safe, the bond between the Apache man, Lily, and her mother stronger than ever, and a sense of belonging beginning to settle deeply in the Apache man's once lonely heart. Days following the outlaw attack were filled with a fragile peace. Lily's mother had returned to full health, the garden was blooming, and the village slowly settled into a quiet routine. But for the Apache man, the tranquility brought a new, unexpected challenge, not one of physical danger, but of confronting the ghosts of his past. For the first time, he began to realize that protecting the family wasn't enough. He had to confront the emotional barriers he had long built around his heart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Apache man sat outside the mother's home, sharpening tools and reflecting on his life. Memories of his childhood flooded back of loss, betrayal, and the family he had once loved but could not save. He remembered promises broken by fate, friends lost to violence, and the solitude he had embraced to shield himself from further pain. The calm of the village contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside him, making him realize that the emotional wounds he carried were far deeper than any physical danger he had faced. Lily approached quietly, sensing his unease. She sat beside him and, without needing to speak, placed her small hand over his. The gesture was simple, yet it conveyed trust, admiration, and love, things the Apache man had long denied himself. Her presence reminded him of why he had stayed, to protect, to guide, and to care. But this challenge required more than protection. It demanded vulnerability. He had to allow himself to feel, to hope, and to embrace connection without fear. Just as he began to acknowledge these emotions, a messenger arrived from a neighboring village. A fire had broken out on the outskirts of the plains, threatening homes and lives. The Apache man's skills were needed not just as a protector, but as a leader capable of organizing a response to a disaster. This new threat forced him into action. Combining the physical skills he had honed with the emotional growth he had begun to experience, he rallied villagers, coordinating efforts to contain the fire while instructing them on safety and evacuation. Lily followed closely, carrying water and assisting wherever she could. The mother, though still recovering, offered food and encouragement, strengthening the communal effort. For the Apache man, This was a test unlike any before. It was no longer a single life at stake, but a community depending on his courage, wisdom, and now emotional openness. Amid the chaos, he encountered children trapped by the flames. Fear surged through him, but he drew on every lesson he had learned: patience, strategy, and compassion. One by one, he guided them to safety, Lily close at hand, witnessing his strength and gentleness intertwined. The fire's fury tested not only his physical skill but his emotional resilience, forcing him to act decisively while caring deeply for those he had come to love. When the blaze was finally controlled, and the village safe, the Apache man stood amid the scorched earth, exhausted yet fulfilled. The villagers cheered, not just for the containment of the fire, but for the man who had risked himself to protect them all. Lily ran to him, hugging his leg tightly, and her mother joined, tears of relief streaming down her face. The Apache man felt a warmth that went beyond pride. It was a deep, abiding connection, a recognition that love and trust had finally found their way into his life. Part 8 closes with a quiet reflection. The Apache man had faced both external threats and the internal struggle of opening his heart. The fire had tested him, but it also proved that he could protect, care, and belong. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope not just for survival, but for a life intertwined with the family he had come to love. The village was finally settling into a sense of normalcy after the fire, but the Apache man sensed that peace was fragile. Lily and her mother had grown to rely on him not just as a healer and protector, but as a presence of stability and care. And yet, a lingering tension hinted that the next challenge would demand everything he had learned: his strength, his skill, and more importantly, his heart. One morning, a stranger arrived at the village's edge, riding a horse fast and erratic. The villagers quickly realized this was no ordinary traveler. He carried urgent news. A dangerous group of bandits, larger and more organized than before, was approaching with the intention of raiding not only the village but also the surrounding farms. Panic rippled through the community. The villagers looked to the Apache man, their trust and hope now firmly placed in his hands. The Apache man immediately assessed the situation. He called Lily and her mother aside, explaining that they would need to take precautions but not panic. His calm presence inspired confidence. He quickly devised a plan to protect the village. Women and children would be hidden in safe locations, supplies would be secured, and villagers capable of defending themselves would be stationed strategically around the perimeter. This was no longer a simple rescue mission. It was a full-scale defense, testing not just his ability to fight, but his leadership and emotional resilience. As the sun dipped low, the bandits appeared on the horizon. They were more intimidating than any he had faced before, and their leader, a tall, scarred man, spotted the Apache man and sneered, clearly aware of his reputation. But the Apache man did not flinch. He moved with precision, directing villagers, setting traps, and using the terrain to their advantage. Lily stayed close, following his instructions with unwavering trust, her small size and courage complementing his expertise. The confrontation was tense and chaotic. Bandits attempted to break through the village's defenses, but the Apache man's strategy held. He faced them directly when necessary, using skill and intelligence rather than brute force, guiding the villagers to act with courage and purpose. For the first time, he realized that he was not acting alone. He was part of a community that had learned to trust him, to fight beside him, and to rely on his guidance. During the heat of the battle, a critical moment arose. One of the bandits lunged toward Lily, taking advantage of the chaos. The Apache man reacted instinctively, throwing himself between her and the attacker. His movements were precise, powerful, and protective, showcasing both his physical mastery and his emotional commitment. Lily's wide eyes met his, and in that moment, the bond between them crystallized. He was no longer just her protector. He was family, willing to risk everything to ensure her safety. By nightfall, the bandits, recognizing they could not overpower the village, retreated. The villagers cheered, grateful not only for their lives and property, but for the courage, leadership, and heart the Apache man had demonstrated. Lily's mother embraced him, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "You are more than a protector. You are part of our family." Lily clung to his arm, her small voice echoing the same sentiment. As the village quieted, the Apache man sat outside gazing at the stars. He reflected on the journey that had begun with a little girl's plea. From rescuing a mother to defending an entire community, he had faced both external dangers and the internal challenge of opening his heart. He realized that protection, courage, and love were inseparable. His heart, once guarded, now had room for connection, trust, and belonging. Part 9 ends with a sense of triumph and emotional closure. The village safe, the mother fully recovered, Lily secure and happy, and the Apache man embracing his new role not as a solitary wanderer, but as a guardian, mentor, and cherished member of a family and community that now depended on him. Dawn after the bandit attack brought a serene calm over the village. Birds chirped, the wind rustled gently through the trees, and for the first time in weeks, Lily, her mother, and the Apache man could breathe without the weight of fear pressing down on them. The village was intact, the mother fully recovered, and the people had come to see the Apache man not just as a mysterious outsider, but as an irreplaceable protector and friend. Yet the most profound change was happening quietly within him, an opening of the heart he had long kept locked. Lily ran through the garden, calling to her mother and the Apache man, laughing freely in the sunshine. Her joy was infectious, and for a moment he allowed himself to simply watch, feeling a warmth he had not known in years. He realized that these simple moments, the laughter of a child, the recovery of life, the safety of loved ones, were worth more than any skill or strength he possessed. They were the measure of what he had been missing in his solitude. That morning, the villagers gathered near the mother's home. They brought gifts of food, handmade goods, and tokens of gratitude, celebrating the Apache man's bravery, wisdom, and compassion. Children shyly approached him, asking questions about the forest and the animals, eager to learn from the man they had once feared. The adults offered words of thanks, their respect evident in every glance. The Apache man, usually quiet and reserved, felt a sense of belonging wash over him. He was no longer an outsider. He was a vital thread in the fabric of this community. Lily's mother approached him with a soft smile, placing a hand on his arm. "You didn't just save me," she said, her eyes glistening. "You saved my family. And you saved yourself, too." Her words struck a deep chord. He realized that the journey had been transformative not only for Lily and her mother, but for himself. The little girl who had first knocked on his door with tears in her eyes had awakened a capacity for connection, care, and love that he had long abandoned. The Apache man looked down at Lily, kneeling to meet her gaze. "You've taught me more than I could have imagined," he said quietly. "You've shown me that opening my heart isn't weakness. It's strength." Lily's face broke into a radiant smile, and she hugged him tightly, feeling the bond that had grown through shared struggles, dangers, and quiet moments of trust. As the sun climbed higher, he walked through the village, greeting neighbors with a calm confidence, guiding those who needed advice or assistance. He shared knowledge of the forest, taught children the basics of survival, and helped rebuild areas damaged during the fire. For the first time, his skills were not used in isolation. They were tools to serve a community that now included him fully. That evening, the three of them sat outside the mother's home, the sky painted with shades of orange and pink. The Apache man felt a profound peace, a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. Lily leaned against his shoulder, her mother holding her hand, and for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future one filled with laughter, safety, and the warmth of family. The walls he had built around his heart had crumbled, replaced by trust, affection, and belonging. Part 10 closes with a lasting sense of triumph and emotional resolution. The village is safe, the mother's life fully restored, Lily thriving under the care of both her mother and the Apache man himself transformed. He is no longer a solitary figure wandering the wilds, but a guardian, mentor, and loving presence in a family and community that has embraced him. His journey from isolation to connection, from reluctance to courage, and from solitude to belonging finds its final, heartwarming conclusion, leaving the reader with a sense of hope, love, and the enduring power of compassion.